Planets are completely changing in Stellaris, with a new feature being added called zones, which we're going to break down. Special planets like Ecomonopolises and habitats are also getting slightly changed. All these changes are quite hard to get your mind around, so let's just get straight into it and try and break it down the best I can. This week we're looking more at the economic changes of the Stellaris 4.0 Phoenix update, and how we're going to update the planet UI to work with them. As this is all still in development, things are still subject to change, and I'm going to be using a lot of the UX design mockups in this dev diary. The final versions will not match these work in progress designs precisely. The open beta will definitely not be at these polished levels. Also be aware that the numbers on these mockups are a placeholder meant to help the rest of the team get the layout right. So things like pop count or production numbers aren't accurate. This is a huge disclaimer. Things will probably be different, but we can get the vibe of what things are going to be, and we can give our initial feedback and comments, but it's most likely going to be different. With that huge disclaimer out the way, let's get on to planets, districts, zones, buildings, and jobs. As mentioned last week, one of the fundamental changes we're making to the economy behind the scenes is that planets are now the source of production rather than the pops themselves. This is a generally subtle change from your perspective as a player, but this opened up an opportunity to revamp exactly how planets are structured and to formalize some of the job hierarchy. A few of you have already guessed some of the things I'm going to share with you. Was it me? Probably not. We're introducing a new planetary feature, zones. By specializing in districts, zones function similar to how the Forge World, Factory World, and Industrial World designations previously modified the jobs provided by industrial districts, only now as a more structured, intuitive, and flexible mechanic. Okay, that's interesting. That means if you didn't know, industrial districts by default give a split of alloys and consumer goods, but if you specialize into a Forge World, it only gives alloy jobs. This means you can specialize the worlds in cool ways, but only building one district. So if they're going down that route, that's more than welcome, I think. The 4.0 planet hierarchy is: planets produce and consume resources, districts provide a base number of jobs for each level of development. Oh gosh, it's going to be fundamentally completely different to what I know. Oh no. Zones manipulate what jobs are provided by their district. Okay. Buildings typically modify the production of jobs themselves, though may also provide static numbers of jobs. Okay, that's a big change in that wording, because buildings have been producing mainly static number of jobs, and then a few give a modifier, like the alloy forge also gives a job though, or the thing that uses motes that I can't remember the name of, the industrial thing that gives a percent for consumer goods and alloys. They're kind of switching that around by the sounds of it. And then jobs are filled by workforce and make the planet produce a single resource by default, unless they have been modified. So essentially a mineral job will give minerals unless it's modified by like a feature that gives minerals and crystals, for example. Standard planets have a city district that contains your urban development and remains capped by planet size, as it is in 3.14. The city district has 4 zones. One will always be locked to a governmental zone and contain your capital building, while the other 3 will be selectable. Normal planets also have mining, agricultural, and energy districts, which each have 1 zone, and, like 3.14, are gated by planetary features. Industrial districts have been removed, as their function has been replaced by zones. Okay, here's the first screenshot. That was a lot to digest. So remember, these buildings are going to work probably different to what we're used to. Buildings won't just provide jobs, they'll affect the zones that they're placed in. So as we can see here, also huge that industrial districts are gone. I'm presuming the zones are going to be the thing that are industrial districts, but not. So let's break this screenshot down. As you can see, the UI is completely different. We have the city district with 3 building slots, but 1 is taken up by the capital building. You can probably place a science building to shift what the jobs provide, is what I'm presuming. I'm not entirely sure. Or maybe a unity building. And then you can see on the right, we got a planetary designation mining world, so that's still in. And in a zone, we can click to add a new zone. We get more zones for each tech that the capital building tech was. So we will want the tech 100% to get more zones. I think it's just better to keep reading because we don't know everything yet. Also, yes, there is an upgrade button in the district slots. That looks kind of similar to what it is. If you're enjoying this breakdown so far, make sure to subscribe. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm really close to 60k subscribers, and it would just be really cool to hear. We'll get back on with the dev diary. Thank you. Upgrading districts is now clearly shown as a button on the planet UI. Yeah, this should reduce the number of... It took me X months to realize you can build districts posts. Literally, that was me when I first played. Didn't know you could make districts because those squares... I didn't know you could click on them to upgrade or build more. I like that UI change. As part of the increase in differentiation between district and buildings, we've changed some of the terminology slightly. Instead of building a dozen districts across a planet, you will upgrade their development level. Functionality, this remains the same, just a bit more of a spice up on the lore, I guess. You're upgrading them rather than building a bunch more. We've got another screenshot here with the mining, agricultural, and generator districts. It looks like you can only build buildings in them when you get the upgrading building tech. So you had the mineral purification plant, you had the global energy grid, and I don't even know what the food one's called because I never built it. And we can see they are different based on planetary features still, so that's still staying very interesting. Zones are a new addition to the planet hierarchy. Zones let you change the nature of their district. By default, the city district will provide housing and increase the maximum number of civilians that your planet can support. Remember, civilians is essentially what clerks were, but they're kind of unemployed. They're just sitting there. They will provide trade currently, I believe is what they said. Not 100% sure. Based on design discussions over the past week, we're leaning towards your empire capital having a bonus increasing this number significantly, which has the nice secondary effect of making the conquest of homeworlds in the early game carry the societal challenge of suddenly creating many angry dissidents that will be unable to promote back to civilians as this bonus is lost. Oh, okay. So if you invade a capital, it's no longer classed as a capital, but you've got a bunch of civilians that are just sitting there because you took a capital. But if you can build more jobs for them, you're laughing. So there is an upside and a downside to aggressive conquest early on. If you build a foundry zone, the city district will replace some of their civilian capacity and housing with Meturgulous jobs for each level of development. If you then build a factory zone, the city districts will provide both Meturgulous and artisan jobs, but with further reductions to their citizen capacity. So we can see from this screenshot, the city district has got an admin building on it, which I'm presuming is giving some sort of Unity jobs or buffs to Unity, not sure. But then on the right, we've built a foundry zone, which is changing what the city districts are giving in terms of jobs. And then you've got some buildings in there. I think that's the ancient refinery and foundry. And you also have the research zone. So I'm guessing the city districts are also giving ally jobs, research jobs. And then the buildings inside those are buffing those up, but you're reducing your citizens, which is giving less total job capacity on the thing, because that citizens is different to civilians. Okay, while you can build multiple zones of the same type in your city district, for example, the first zone of each type built on a planet gains free slots for buildings. Duplicate zones do not grant additional building slots. Buildings typically modify their production of their associated job, and most are now planet unique. The majority of buildings are restricted to the specific relevant zones, but some can be built anywhere. The government zone and urban zone can, however, accept most urban buildings. The build list will be filtered appropriately. So again, remember, this is not final. How I'm interpreting this is that if I built another research zone in that previous image, we don't get building slots, but it's changing more of the citizens or civilians or whatever the city district's doing into researchers. So you can still specialize your planets by just spamming research zones, but you will only get free building slots to buff them up. The buildings are essentially changing a lot, how they just change what your districts do rather than giving loads of jobs. Okay, the majority of jobs will have a single output by default. So researchers are being broken apart into physicists, biologists, and engineers. We're back to 1.0. Oh my gosh. What? Okay, I kind of like this from a roleplay sense, because if your people are like militarists with natural engineering, yes, let's just build loads of engineering. You could just zoom ahead in engineering, get big ships with big kinetic weapons and big armor and just run at them. Or maybe they're physicists, like me, because I do have a physics degree. I'm gonna have to roleplay as myself. You can just go like, oh, we got the best shields and lasers. And then society or biologists, whatever, we don't care. But I guess if you want to rush different things, this is quite cool. I didn't play when science was broken up, so I do not really know how this functions. I've always played when labs give all three types. So this is going to be very interesting. Origins and civics that previously replaced jobs will now typically instead have a building that modifies the associated job. The benefit of this is that it should now be able to stack better with other similar civics. We hope to be able to reduce restrictions, so perhaps you'll be able to sacrifice willing pops by flinging them into a black hole for money. That's cool. Essentially, civics that change what, say, a bureaucrat does or a priest does or whatever, it will just modify the output so you can actually stack things, is how I'm interpreting it. So say you had, I can't even think of a civic that changes the priests. But if you had that and a civic that gave more output to bureaucrat jobs, it should change, hopefully. These changes are very, very interesting. It's very hard to know how it's going to function without playing. I'm just very excited for that beta that's being teased so we can actually put our hands on it and try it. Remember, this could all change. It might not be free building slots. It might be completely different with districts, but this is the general vibe they're going for. The Planetary Surface. Your homeworld is a bit of a special case in Stellaris. It's not a brand new colony, but it's also not very specialized. It needs to provide a little bit of everything, but could really use some cleanup after all those years of development. Becoming an early space age civilization is a dirty job. Here's the work in progress UX mock-up of what Earth may look like at the start of the game. Okay, let's break this down. Remember, this is not final. It does look so much better though, and a bit easier to understand what the heck is going on. So we've got workforce, jobs, lots of the icons and information is the same, it's just told in a different way. Don't know what that special resource icon is on the right. We do have the amount of planets we have at the top, which is different. Obviously the city districts are completely different with zones, and the production and deficits is more in your face, which is going to be needed because we're going to need to use trade for our truckers delivering the planet deficits to other planets. The unspecialized mess of being an early space age civilization gives us a relatively unspecialized zone that provides us with basic resources necessary at the start of the game. We'll eventually want to replace that zone with a more specialized one. So yeah, we do have the early space age industry, which has the research lab and commercial zone. Interestingly, these are already the stuff we start with in the capital zone as well. But I'm just presuming the industries changing city stuff into industry, consumer goods and alloys. Then we got a bit of science and we got a bit of trade. They've also changed the text of the bottom things I've just noticed. We have surface management, then population, armies, and corporate are the same, I believe. Or corporate used to be holdings. Don't know how that's going to change when you get an overlord. Anyway, as we head to the stars, we'll naturally want to colonize our guaranteed habitable world. The new colonization UI will let us immediately set the desired planetary designation for our brand new colony. That is very good. You don't have to wait for the colony to finish is how I'm interpreting that. Let's take a look. So we can colonize City Alpha 5. We have the selection of all the different species. Why are they all the same? I don't know. Maybe this is just this is placeholder. Remember, it's placeholder. Need to remember that. Shows us the amount of districts, the modifiers, that is a Gaia world, size, features. We can change the colony designation, and don't worry, we will be able to select something other than the factory world. It's just placeholder. Remember that, placeholder. We can turn automation straight away on and customize the automation, and then a big, nice colonization button. That's so much better than what it is now. Makes it feel like a big step for your empire. Here's what our new colony could look like once the colonization process finishes. So we got 2 of 2 planets at the top. That's different. Obviously workforce and pops. 1 pop's 100 workforce for now, but it's a placeholder. It's a placeholder. Yeah, it's pretty much similar to the capital, but nothing is built. We can build the mining, agricultural, and generate districts, but the buildings don't unlock till we get the tech. And then we can select the zone, build buildings in the city district. Very cool. But why did you choose a mining world for a planet with poor quality minerals? Yeah, well, you can change it, hopefully still. That is something, I'm guessing you can click on the planetary designation mining world to change it. It doesn't exactly look like a button at the minute, so that might be my critique of that. It looks like just information like the planet production and planet deficit. The reassembled ship shelter provides colonists jobs that will provide the amenities and stability previously granted by the colony designation. As shown, the technologies required to expand on an alien world are not necessarily the same as those you need back on your home planet. Huh? I do not know what that means. Is it because you get the zone before colonial centralization? And it says reassembled ship shelter? I'm not sure. A UX designer has created these explanations of the new UI. With districts and buildings header, city district, mining district, zone built, agricultural district, zone unlocked / not built, then generated district, zone locked. That's what it's all going to look like. Agricultural district is implying that we could select different zones, but I'm not sure if that's the case. Again, work in progress. We then have the city zones. That's going to change what the city does. Planetary designation, automation things, planet district points, build queue button. Oh yeah, we don't have a build queue. So I'm guessing that will pop out when we click it and we can queue up buildings. Okay. Planet production summary, planet deficit summary, and we can move on to the specifics in the zones. Development level is going to be interesting to see how they deal with going over 10, because I believe 10's the max that they've got in the game. They must have made more. District name is zone name. So each zone will have a different zone. But if you're RPers, you can be like, oh, I've got a massive deep core mine going and I want to upgrade it to whatever the next thing is. District event art, district icon art, district point, spent / built, and then unspent, and then total districts, spacebar. Yeah, it's just all makes sense when you look at it. I'm just reading out what is basically told, and that's a good sign of UX. We do have zone building slots. Interestingly, the machine assembly plant's in the mining district, and it says always free, but remember, it's a concept. There could be 2 building slots. It could be more or less, who knows? And not necessarily going to have those buildings allowed in those building slots. And here's what our 2 planets might look like after some time has passed. So our city district is called a metallurgy. Wait, is it actually called metallurgy? Wow, I've been saying it wrong. Very, very wrong the whole time. Metallurgy research complex, because we have the foundry zone and the research zone, so you get a custom name depending on the zones, I'm guessing. The generate district's fossil fuels, agricultural food processing plant, or mining district deep core mines. And you can see we've got bioreactor and food, so this is letting them produce more energy. And we still have the max districts, so you can see on the food one we have 3 out of 8, but we can't get to 8 because we only have 3 slots left in the top right. Then the mining zone has a military industrial complex with a research zone and fortress zone. We have the Bethrian power plant and energy grid in the generator district, and then the mining district with, is that 1.0 mines? I remember those from my video when we went back. So there can be a lot of buildings potentially that buff up your production, which is going to be interesting. The only thing that I've noticed is a lot of these planets are doing everything, so hopefully the numbers don't change so much that every planet just produces as much as it can of everything. I like specializing the worlds. I think that's cool. It makes them more unique. Special cases. Ever since Megacorp, paving the entire world has always been a grand ambition of empires. We're currently thinking that an eco-monopolis should act like the megacity it is. The eco-monopolis will have multiple urban districts, 1 large main one, and then 3 more smaller archaeologies. What? Wait, this means you can make a fortress eco-monopolis? Okay, so the main capital is giving 2 zones, but then you have a bunch of other archaeologies, which, if you remember, these city district things are giving jobs to whatever the zones are. You can just make a massive science world. Oh my world. Eco-monopolises are going to be crazy. This is the case. Interesting enough, this planet's only producing physics, but I'm not going to look too much into that because, again, mock-up. Although the gameplay of upgrading a habitat complex by building orbitals throughout a system made habitats more interesting, having to hunt down the last moon, place the orbital, proved incredibly annoying. Yes, it did. I just couldn't be bothered to build habitat. For 4.0, we're removing this pain point. Upgrading districts on a habitat will spawn orbitals throughout the system as the development level increases. Oh wow, that's huge. Some of the district capacity will be available immediately upon colonizing the habitat central complex, with the remainder gated by upgrading the capital building. We're also considering having the district capacity for habitats more closely linked to the deposits available in this system instead of the current behavior where each mineral deposit grants a static amount of capacity. Okay, so it's based on the system rather than the deposit exactly where you build it, which makes sense because if you're automatically generating the orbitals, you won't be choosing which one you're doing. So it makes more sense to just do it based on the system wide. We expect to see some unique or former districts for habitats be reimagined or returned as zones, such as the Order's demise for Knights of the Toxic God or Sanctuary districts for Rogue Servitors. Okay, so they can do a lot with the districts and zones, or districts into zones. So this habitat has a fortress zones, and the orbital districts are undeveloped, which could be, I don't even know, anything. Then you have astro mining bays. Goodbye hunting for where that last minor orbital is hiding. I really like this change. That's so good. Now we can spam habitats in every damn system. Next week, Grunts at Work will go into some of the scripting details of jobs and pop group. We should also have some more information about the upcoming 4.0 live stream. See you then. That's huge. This is very exciting. Everything's changing. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. I'm cautiously optimistic because I don't want it to be the case where planets do everything. I like my specialization. This doesn't confirm or deny that. It just really depends on the numbers and the final implementation. But there's going to be beta, so we can test it and give our feedback. If you enjoyed this video, watch me make Montu play only using clerks with my Empire in his own roleplay multiplayer event. Pick it now, watch it, and he may or may not destroy the Empire, or do really well, we'll see.